Hey, what is going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning into this show. We're going to do things a little bit differently today, but before we get started, I want to reintroduce Nick from Relatively Uncharted. He is joining me again today, and typically, what you would see from us is from a Thursday night perspective is we would go through each game of the upcoming weekend and kind of go over what we see as far as a trend and who we think is going to win or lose, the over, under, point spread, all that kind of fun stuff. This week was a little bit different. I had some issues with getting out of Florida. We can never really time it up real good, but we're doing it today. It is Saturday night, 5 p.m. Central Time, and we are going to do something a little bit differently, which I wanted to do earlier in the week as well, which was go over the first quarter power rankings in the NFL. And I'm going to preface this real quick by saying the first quarter power rankings, I put out a power ranking pre-regular season. That show happened obviously about a month and a half ago, just to kind of set expectations or, kind of put teams out there and what I thought was going to happen throughout the season. I don't do it every week. I'm probably only going to do it maybe, 4 times because it's going to be your first quarter, your halftime power rankings, and then third quarter power rankings. And then maybe toward the end of the year, we'll get into it a little bit more as we start getting that playoff picture cleared up. But before we get into the show, I just want to reintroduce and thank Nick for being a part of the show again today. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, what's up, Jeff and Downfield Reed? Excited to be back on. We've, as you mentioned, we've done the predictions episode, and this is my first time doing a power rankings episode, so I'm excited. I think the quarterly cadence is probably reasonable. When you start doing it week by week, it's there's a lot to track. It's experts do it, but let's see what we got, and I'd be curious to see what your preseason rankings were and where they've lined up at.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. There's a lot of big gaps toward the, I'll say at the top and at the bottom. The middle is kind of a playing field right now with so many teams that are 2-3 and 3-2. But we will get into that. We'll talk about strength of schedule a little bit because that does play a factor as well as far as what you can expect from your team. And it looks like we've got a comment already in here. So I'm just going to check that out real quick. Let's go. All right, legend, here we go. All right, so I'm going to pull this up. We'll add that to where we're at. A lot of question marks up in here. This is kind of what we started off with again. Downfield Read power rankings. I don't look at much of anything else as far as the NFL power rankings or Nick Wright or Colin Cowherd or ESPN or all those other guys. I kind of just, my own formula, I guess, and what I see when I'm watching the games and how I feel that they're gonna pan out during the regular season. So basically how this works, I want to explain to everyone. Like I said before, I've got my pre-regular season power rankings. So when you start to see, positives and negatives, teams moving up and down in the rankings here, it's based off of that pre-regular season. It's not based off of last week. So I don't do the weekly stuff. So here's what we've got for the first team in my power rankings is the New England Patriots, and you can see there's nothing next to them. I had New England ranked as the 32nd team overall, and this is why I don't do it weekly, because when they come out in week 1 and they beat Cincinnati, and everybody thinks, oh my gosh, New England's going to be a good team. They're not. I mean, obviously, they've lost 4 games in a row, so we're looking at New England, and now they're changing it up finally, right? They're putting in Drake May this week. He's going to get his first official start, so that should be exciting. And even being this early into the season, we saw last week that they took out Ramondre Stevenson. They started in Antonio Gibson. That didn't last very long. But New England, a lot of things going on there with a brand new coach and Gerard Mayo. So, Nick, what are your thoughts on number 32?
Yeah, I like it. I agree with it. I like to hate the Patriots. Beating Cincinnati week 1, you certainly, like you said, you think highly of the Bengals, Joe Burrow. They've had a successful run with him behind the snap, and then come to find out that they've just been garbage all year. So when they win that, it doesn't change much when you look at it holistically here. And them at 32nd, obviously nothing has changed.
Yeah. So let's keep moving along then, and this might not be as much of a surprise to anybody either. Number 31, I had the Carolina Panthers. Obviously the big change with the Carolina Panthers now is that they don't have Bryce Young as their starting quarterback. They've got Andy Dalton in there. Still not a very good team overall, as the Carolina Panthers are 1-4, kind of that same expectation in there. Obviously in the beginning of the year, didn't figure that they were going to be a very strong team. Number 31, what do you got for Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, only one team can be the 32nd worst team in the league. And as far as dumpster fires go, Carolina is the dumpster fire of dumpster fires. So, where else do they slide? they belong right down here with the Patriots. So
Yeah, and it's not looking too good for them to get out of it either, is it? I mean, this week they've got Atlanta. Falcons are favored by at least 6 in this game. And the same thing with New England, kind of missed on that one. The Texans are favored by 6.5. Just kind of goes to show what they're trending to do for this week and for the rest of the season.
Yeah, tough matchups.
Yeah. All right. Here's our first changeup. Is at number 30. And this team has disappointed me for the last year plus, because last year I had Jacksonville actually winning the AFC. They had such a cake schedule that I figured that they were going to go 13-4 and they were just going to run the table, especially when you've got somebody who was at that point in time not seen as a mediocre quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. They still had Travis Etienne. They had a pretty decent defense in there, and it turns out that they're complete garbage. So for them, Jacksonville falls a lot of spots. I mean, I think I had them at, I guess, what was that number? They've taken a 16 point hit. Jacksonville at 1-4, and who would have thought that? And it's not even like they've got that hard of a schedule, tied for 18th most difficult schedule, but they're 1-4. So I think that just kind of shows what direction they're heading in. And Doug Peterson might be the next coach that you see gone.
Yeah, they've had some games that could have gone either way, but ultimately, the end of the run that they had last season, you kind of think highly of them this year. I'm not fully bought into Trevor Lawrence. I like these guys, these kids that have spectacular college careers, but at the same time, it's a completely different animal being in the NFL. So to clarify, minus 16 means that dropped from 14 down to 30.
Yep, I had them kind of middle of the pack, kind of one of those teams where could they make the playoffs? They might not make the playoffs. They don't play or don't seem to play in a very hard division there with the Indianapolis Colts. The Houston Texans obviously are probably the favorite in that division, but they don't play in a very hard division, I would say, overall. So kind of one of those border teams for me is, if they could finish 9-8, could they make a wild card type of a thing? So yeah, they fell. They were, I believe, at my number 14 spot and fell about 16 already just after 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I don't particularly disagree with it. So the audience knows I'm, cross-referencing this against the ESPN power rankings. So they have them at 29. It sounds like, the rest of the league agrees with your pick there.
Cool. Good deal. They're at Jacksonville this week. They're at Chicago this week. Chicago by 1.5 is the current spread. So we're looking at maybe Jacksonville puts another win in that column, but I'm not seeing it either. Yeah. Not optimistic. So if you're a betting person, I would take Chicago by 2 points there. All right. At number 29, here's another big hitter. And this one couldn't possibly have gone. This one might be the worst one that we've got, and we'll see where Cincinnati falls actually, because I'm sure a lot of people are anticipating to see them as well. Miami, -19. Obviously, I had them at number 10 overall in the beginning of the season, which, hey, rightly so. They were in the playoffs last year. Looked like they were going to do a lot more this year. Had the same cast coming back here with Achane and Mostert and Hill and Waddle and Tua, and you saw what happened there. They got Tua knocked out, and quarterback is a very important position in the NFL.
Absolutely. I mean, they drive the game. They drive the ball downfield. You have your assets on the side that can help you out and move the ball, but losing Tua, losing the captain behind the snap that, decides the plays, the audibles, what you're going to do, reading the field. When he's out and you've been practicing with him all off season, you have someone new. It's pretty easy to see you lose a little bit of faith in how they'll finish up the rest of the season.
Yeah, and you know what? For teams that hate to have their bye week early on in the season, this was certainly a help for Miami. They've got the bye this week. So yeah, good job. Hopefully they can recoup a little bit and come back stronger in the second half, figure out if it's going to be Tyler Huntley or someone else behind center there. But yeah, as of right now, it's looking like a dumpster fire in Miami as well. So we've got, 2 Florida teams. Hate to bash them. They've already been bashed enough over the last few weeks, literally.
Yeah.
But sorry if that's a sensitive subject for some people. But yeah, Miami down at number 29.
Yeah. No, listen, you escaped Hurricane Milton. You're safe, and you can make the jokes that you want as long as nobody's hurt by it, right? It's just words.
That's right.
But real quick, I was just going to say that ESPN has them at 23.
23. Well, that's favorable.
Optimistic for them.
Very optimistic in that division, especially when you're playing with, the Bills. You've got the Jets in there. They fired their head coach. Who knows what's going to happen with them? But you've got New England there at number 32. They might be one of the worst divisions in the NFL, and who would have thought that after
it's
5
looking
weeks?
It's looking ugly.
All right, at number 28, I had high hopes for this team as well, and it's the Cleveland Browns. Not real high hopes. I had them at number 18 overall. Again, one of those guys where they made the playoffs last year. They had 11 wins. It's one of those things, though, where they were kind of carried. I'm going to say it. They were carried by Flacco at the end of the year, and now we've got the Deshaun Watson experience back in Cleveland, and it's turning out to be a gigantic flub. So it was really, again, talking about that quarterback play when your quarterback is not performing like Watson is not, how detrimental that can be to your season. I gave Cleveland, kind of right in that middle of the pack. They could flop, they could do well, but here we are, number 28. They're the Cleveland Browns of old, I guess.
Yeah, I couldn't help but notice your Flacco love there. That's all fair game, especially when he took your team to the Super Bowl. He's experienced, and when you have someone like Deshaun Watson on there, and you want a hands-on experience, to throw another punt in there, and he's just really not doing a good job. It's it leaves a lot to be desired for, and ESPN has them at 30, but any of these could really go anyway, and it's kind of wild to see these first bottom 5 picks. 3 of these have been in the playoffs the previous season, and maybe that has something to do with, your sentiment, thinking that you had high hopes, and that just sort of drives them down the rankings. But they're not playing great, so it's not unreasonable.
Yeah, and it's not getting any easier for them this week. They're going to Philadelphia, and Philly just got A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith back. Obviously, they've got Saquon there. This is going to be a really ugly game. Right now, they've got the Eagles by 9.5. I don't think that there's a chance that the Browns go into Philadelphia and walk away with a win in this one. So it's only going to get worse.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, number 27. We got a first riser in the group. I didn't have much faith for Tennessee. Obviously, I had him at number 30 overall. They've got Will Levis there. He really hasn't shown many flashes. Tony Pollard has been better than what I expected him to be. They got Ridley there, and he really hasn't done a whole lot. But maybe it's for the sake of everyone else doing so much worse. But Tennessee has had a 500 opponents winning 500 schedule, I guess you want to call it, which is 16th, right in the middle of the league. They've played fairly well, still 1-3. Maybe that's why I decided to put them at number 27. These other teams are 1-4, so we haven't seen Tennessee. They're coming off their bye. But yeah, Tennessee at number 27.
Yeah, when they're beating middle of the pack teams, it kind of leaves a lot open there. They're beating other teams that aren't doing so hot, but they're also losing to teams that aren't doing so hot. So it could go either way. If they start clicking, maybe they'll slide up in the rankings here a little bit better, but 27 is not unfair.
No, and they've got Indianapolis coming in to play them at home. The Titans are favored by 2.5 at this point. I think that they could probably pull that one out too.
I like that. I like that pick.
Yeah. All right, number 26. We've got the LA Rams. They've dropped 14. So I did have them at number 12. This isn't really their fault, though, right? I mean, you lose Cooper Kupp, you lose Puka Nacua. Those are 2 very big weapons to lose. They've played actually admirably. They beat San Fran earlier. But regardless, they are 1-4. I gave them a little bit of wiggle room in there just because they've had the 5th, or they're tied for the 5th toughest schedule in the NFL. But regardless, they are 1-4, and they'll probably jump up as soon as they get some of their weapons back. But at this point in time, I don't think that they're a very scary team to play.
Yeah, we can only hope that they come back soon. I hate to see this ranking, but it's not. I don't disagree with it. I like to respect you through that on them early in the season, hoping they'd be crack the top 10, at some point. But San Fran's they're a minus 500 team right now, which is a shocker. But they lost to Detroit. That's awesome. Cardinals. That was a kind of a weird game, but just kind of, I guess, like you said, I'll agree with you. It's a tough schedule.
Yeah, you know what? And if you're a Rams fan like you are, you still got to have some optimism there, because that whole division, you figured maybe San Fran was going to run away with it. And then after Seattle started 3-0, you're thinking, oh my gosh, here's another tough team. And now they're 3-3. They're at the top, aren't they, in the division at 3-3?
What are you talking? San Fran?
Yeah.
They're 2-3, right? But they
And Seattle is 3-3.
we're in week 6, so after this,
But they played Thursday night.
oh, they play. Oh, sorry, correct.
Yep.
You're right. Yeah. So at that point, they'll be 3-3. Yes.
Yeah. So Seattle 3-3, San Fran 3-3, and that's the top of your division. So you're only 2 games out of first.
Yeah.
Miraculously at 1-4.
Yeah. And 2 of those games were final drives. So
Yep.
in overtime.
So this could be a team that could move up, maybe even make the playoffs after everything is said and done. Hopefully Puka and Cooper Kupp come back sooner than later.
Here's hoping.
As long as you got Kyron Williams, right?
Yeah. Yep. 2-2 played well. 2-2.
He definitely did. Now Whittingham, I saw he was questionable if he's going to play or not. You're just going through wide receivers. And at what point in time do you guys not give Michael Thomas a chance here? Come on.
Yeah. We want the Michael Thomas of old.
Yeah, right. All right, number 25. There's the Bengals, and we all know about the Bengals, and they're at 25 right now, -14 from the beginning of the season. So I didn't have, some people had them in the top 5. Cincinnati, I didn't see it with Joe Burrow's injury, and then they had the Jamar Chase contract disputes and all that fun stuff. So they've dropped 14. I had them at number 11 originally. And Cincinnati, they've had, you can't be too hard on them either. They are tied for 5th as well for toughest schedules in the NFL, but they've got they're a one-sided team at this point. They've got a great offense and they've got a terrible defense.
Giving up too many points to the opponents. And what are they, 1-4?
1-4, yeah.
1-4. You know, the team they beat was against the Panthers, so that's really not nothing to be proud of. But come on, man, slide them lower. We want the Rams above them.
Hey, it could have gone either way realistically, because they're like I said, they're tied right now
Yeah.
with the strength of schedule. So if you notice on there, I slid them both down the same.
Yep.
-14.
I did.
Yeah, we'll see. Cincinnati going up against the Giants this week. Bengals are favored by 3.5. That will probably happen. Singletary is questionable at running back for the Giants, and Malik Neighbors is out again with that concussion. So should be a favorable game, I'll say, for the Bengals at this point.
They could pull it off. And you know what? Here's the other thing. Rams can't lose, but they can improve their record. So if the Bengals win, that's rightfully where they belong, I guess.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, I don't know if you said, if you've got ESPN pulled up, where they got these two, Cincinnati and LA?
So LA's 27, disrespect. Bengals are 24. So
wow.
You're right on with the Bengals just about.
Okay, so we're right there. At my number 24, I've got the Raiders, who I didn't expect to do too much. They've only slid down 1 spot from the beginning of the season. I had them at number 23. They are now at number 24. No shocker here for me anyway, as they probably could have done better if they would have had Devontae Adams in there, but the lack of quarterback skill with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell is really what's going to keep them down for the entirety of the season. I don't know if Antonio Pierce was the right guy to put as the head coach of that organization as well. Not a good first quarter for new coaches in the NFL, except for maybe that guy up in Seattle. But for Gerard Mayo and Antonio Pierce, not looking too good. Raiders at 24.
Yeah, I watched the receiver documentary on Netflix, and you see midseason woes with the Raiders, and head coach last year is out the door, and Antonio Pierce was interim head coach. They showed a lot of respect from it. It seemed like Devontae Adams and him really got along very well, which to see this happen this season, it's a little strange, a little confused by it, but yeah, I think my echo just turned on. But anyway, yeah, the Raiders don't have a lot of hope right now, especially with Devontae Adams hitting the road.
Yeah, and for the Raiders, they haven't had a hard schedule either. Tied for 27th for strength of schedule, so not even a hard schedule. They're 2-3, which is why they're so close to those teams that are 1-4 right now. Very well could go lower after this week, because they are playing Pittsburgh, who is not necessarily terrible, and the Steelers are favored by 3. So that should be a punt fest of a game.
Yeah. Let me go turn this noise off in the background. I'll be right back.
No worries. Dee, 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 dee. Darn noisy backgrounds.
Yeah, that was very odd. So I used to live in Fort Lauderdale, and so we're getting a lot of I get a lot of weather updates on my Amazon devices, and they must have heard us talking about Hurricane Milton. I don't even know. It just kicked on.
Oh man, that's my
So,
bad.
yeah, I don't. They've got a mind of mind of their own. We gotta be careful with this AI these days.
Yeah, right. Dang Echo Dots.
Anyway, carry on down the field.
All right, number 23, we've got the Arizona Cardinals that are moving up past your LA Rams there. I didn't have much faith for them in the beginning of the season, had them at number 29. They moved up 6 spots to number 23. They actually have shown that they can hang with some of the better teams in the NFL.
Yeah. We talked about the Rams matchup. I always talk about the Rams, but it was very shocking to see how well we thought they were off to a great start. I remember in our week 2 picks, we had high hopes on them. I think we both picked them for week 2. But they're playing well. They're playing well right now.
Yeah, and if you look at their schedule, they beat both the Rams and San Fran, so great within the division. That could help them out later on in the year. Their losses have been to some relatively good teams, Buffalo, Detroit, and Washington. And we won't get to those teams for quite a while yet because they've all been playing well. So at least their losses have come to exceptionally good teams.
Yeah, and that helps.
It does help. And they're going up against Green Bay this week, and we will see how they favor there. That should be an exciting, high-scoring game, no matter who you're cheering for. So, yeah, another good game for Arizona. Could go either way. I look forward to that one.
Absolutely. Is it in Lambeau or Phoenix?
I believe it is in Arizona.
Okay. Yeah, you like the home field matchup there.
I do. No, I'm sorry. It is in Green Bay. Green Bay is predicted to win by 5. I would say if it was in Arizona, I might even go the other way. But,
yeah,
the Cardinals' offensive line is a little bit beaten up. That should be okay. I think Matt Prater is questionable or out, so they might have lost their good kicker there. But Green Bay has issues as well with their wide receivers. And, yeah. So we'll see what happens there. All right, number 22, we've got the New York Giants, who I had no faith in because I think Daniel Jones is not a very good quarterback. He's steadily proving me wrong a little bit. He seemed to struggle quite a bit in the beginning of the year, but didn't have a whole lot of faith in the Giants. They are 2-3 as well. They've beaten Cleveland and Seattle, and they've lost to Minnesota, Washington, and Dallas. So again, they've lost to all 3 of those teams who have winning records, I believe, at this point. Double checking Dallas. Yep, they're 3-2. So New York has nothing really, they've got the 3rd toughest schedule this year, facing opponents with winning percentage of .615. So to hang out at 2-3, not bad.
Not bad at all. Thought they would have been 0-5. You could see moments of greatness from Daniel Jones, which is odd. They played the Cowboys pretty well. Maybe that's just, the way that it goes is teams that you don't expect them to play well against, they figure it out. Go figure. But I'm not surprised that they're low in the rankings here, though.
Yeah. You know what? And Cincinnati is going to New York this weekend, so we'll see how that one plays out. Like we mentioned before, I think Cincinnati probably pulls away from this one. Bengals are projected to win by 3.5. They had some early week questionables as far as their running backs. Both Zach Moss and Chase Brown were questionable. Now they've both cleared, I believe. Maybe Chase Brown is still questionable, but it sounds like he's going to be playing. And then you've got Devin Singletary on the other side. And obviously Malik Neighbors, who's not playing this week. And I think that's going to hurt him a lot. Not that Wan'Dale Robinson hasn't been very admirable. So has Slayton in their respective roles. And Daniel Jones, I think he's just gutsy enough to just kind of wing that ball out there and throw it down the field to somebody. So I think that there'll still be a viable team, but maybe after this week, the Bengals go above the Giants.
Yeah. Gutsy enough, unrealistically overconfident enough. Those are interchangeable.
Yeah. You know what? I like that better. Yeah. I was going to say dumb enough, but unrealistically confident enough to actually wing the ball down there. So, all right. We got the Giants at 22. And then at 21, I've got the Bears. And this was, when I did this before the regular season, I actually had a Bears fan on, and obviously I had them at number 25 because I had no hope for them. I still don't believe that Caleb Williams is the answer. Yes, he's looked better over the last week or so, but realistically, they are the first team on the list here, and they are at 3-2. So with a winning record, I still have them at 21st. The reason behind that is because they have had the 3rd easiest schedule in the NFL. they have beaten Tennessee, they have beaten the Rams, and they have beaten Carolina. They lost to Houston and Indy. So that to me does not seem like a very good team. It just seems like your schedule allowed you to get to 3-2. And for the most part, those games were really close. They probably shouldn't even have won against Tennessee in week 1. Their defense came up with a few huge plays there. So I've got Chicago at 21, and I know, you know what, I bumped them up 4 spots, right? Not as bad as I thought, but how are you feeling about that one?
Yeah, I'm shocked they're 3-2, but that's, I was going to say that's me not giving them enough respect. They're the Bears, but they beat arguably, if I could plug the Rams again, the greatest team in the NFL this year. But that was at the very end of the game. So, and they had a defensive stop there. Maybe their defense is the Bears of old, but I can win championships, but they're not fantastic or anything. They won't be for a while. Caleb Williams, we've knocked him, but an easy schedule doesn't really show much if you're, with a winning record, if it's an easy schedule.
Yeah. And it's kind of what it reminds me of last year when everybody was high on the Dolphins and the Cowboys and they were going into the playoffs. And it's like, dude, these two teams they've played opponents with winning percentages that are like 350. So what's going to happen when they get into the playoffs? Well, exactly what happened. They're out in the first round. So even if the Bears continue on this, and if you look at what we've got up here right now in the first 21, they've played, what was it? Tennessee, they're on this list. The Rams are on this list. Carolina is on this list. Who's their next opponent? Jacksonville is at number 30. So even if they win and they're 4-2, you've played 4 of the worst statistically teams in the NFL. So I don't even think that they would go up that much from here, even if you're 4-2, which is sad. But again, you got the easiest damn schedule in the NFL. I can't give you credit for that.
No, not at all. That's, I don't know what the right term would be, but it's just a false sense of success there.
Yeah. And even if you're looking at the spread right now, Chicago by 1.5, that doesn't exude confidence to me over Jacksonville.
No, not at all.
All right. Top 20. Here we go. The Jets. The Jets are a mess. I don't know how else to say it. Robert Saleh's not there anymore. They got Nathaniel Hackett calling plays. Is that going to be good or is it going to be bad? All I see is a big question mark there. Aaron Rodgers is questionable to play. I don't know if he's cleared, but this was a team again before. It's like 2023 all over again. Before the Jets got out on their first game and Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, high hopes for the Jets. And that was the same thing this year. Obviously, I thought the same thing as well, having them at number 8 overall to start this year. And they've been a giant disappointment. Their offense has been stagnant. They've lost to the Broncos of all teams. So the Jets fall quite a bit here, down to 20. They don't look like a serious contender at this point.
No, being up in the Northeast here, seeing your ranking for them early on, you sound a lot like a Jets fan. They always think they're top 10. They always think they're going to playoffs. Their Messiah was this 40-year-old quarterback that injured himself in the first drive of the season before. So he's ailing, this ranking should have been your ranking at the start of the season. It should have dropped 12 points from, week 1 to here. But here we are. Rams are sucking ass. Jets are, what are they, 3-2?
Jets 2-2? Are 2-3.
2-3.
Yeah.
Well, still not impressive.
No, and it's not. When you look at who they've played so far, they've beaten Tennessee and New England, and you can see where they're at, number 27 and number 32. They've lost to San Fran, who hasn't been great. They've lost to Denver, who is not a very, tough team, but they did lose to Minnesota. Obviously, Minnesota is 5-0, but still, their strength of schedule is a little skewed. I think it's 15th overall, but that's just because you got Minnesota in there who's 5-0. They should probably be a little bit better than 2-3 at this point in time.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Minnesota matchup, I was surprised by that. It was somewhat close.
Yeah.
But either way, we'll get to Minnesota in a bit, or actually in a while. But
might not happen for a while.
Yeah.
Just to set expectations.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. Number 19, a team that this is the first, well, I shouldn't say the first one. First one when we get up to the mid rankings here that I didn't think was going to be complete trash, like the Carolina Panthers and the New England Patriots. We've got the Indianapolis Colts at number 19. They're still there. They too they're part of that group that is tied for 5th for strength of schedule. And but 2-3, I'm just not very confident in their team at all. They seem to have a lot of injuries. I think Taylor's out again, and Anthony Richardson is questionable. Although Flacco has been playing admirably, 5 touchdowns and no interceptions in the last 2 games. So if they left him in, maybe that would be a benefit to the Colts. I'm going to keep bragging about him, talking him up. But even their wide receivers are banged up now, and look like Alec Pierce might be their number 1 guy again this week because who knows what's happening with Pittman. And yeah, so their team is just kind of a mess. Number 19, and Indianapolis is also 2-3 at this point.
Yeah, with the 2-3 record, you predicted them at 19 at the beginning of the season, and there they've sat. They haven't had fantastic wins over good teams, so they're right where they belong right here.
Yeah, and here's the sad part too. So they're playing the Tennessee Titans in Tennessee this week, and the Titans are actually predicted to win. They've got a 2.5-point favorite.
That's an insult. That has to hurt,
that's
right?
Harsh, right?
Yeah.
It's like, man, we're better than they are. We've got a better record than they do, but yeah, it's still projected to lose. So not a good sign for Indianapolis fans. Number 18, we've got the Chargers, and a lot of people were high on the Chargers in the beginning of the year. I wasn't. I thought they too were somewhere in that could make the playoffs type of a situation. I had them at number 16 in the beginning of the year. Now they're at number 18. They too have had issues. They're coming off their bye. Hopefully they fixed some things with their offensive line, and looks like Herbert is still hurt. Some people had some higher favoritism toward them with having Harbaugh as their new head coach, but they're playing almost exactly where they should be at as well.
Yeah, ESPN has them here as well at 18. Nice. When Herbert can't get stay in the pocket and throw some passes, he lost some of his targets that he was used to in the past, but the team doesn't they don't have that spark, if I could throw a pun in there.
Yeah, they really don't. They're almost a one-dimensional team. They've gone to the run. They really bolstered up that offensive line with run blockers instead of pass blockers. And obviously getting J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards in that backfield was something that, that was done intentionally. Harbaugh likes to run the ball. It kind of runs in the family that way, I guess. But coming off their bye, they're 2-2. They've had the 11th toughest schedule. They've beaten Las Vegas and the Rams. They've lost to Pittsburgh and KC. So they've lost to some good teams, beaten up on some teams that, probably could have been better. But here's where they sit. Still kind of in the middle of the pack. 2-2.
Yep. ESPN agrees.
Awesome. Thank you, ESPN. And I don't often say that. And number 16, another team that is staying put right where I thought that they would be. At number 17 is the New Orleans Saints. And they too are 2-3. And I've got them above the Chargers only because they played one more game, even though their record isn't statistically better than they are. They have one more loss, but they do have the 4th toughest schedule so far this year. Saints look like they were going to walk away with their whole division after week 2, putting up 45 points plus, and then they've dropped a couple of games here, 3 in a row actually. And now they're going to be starting Spencer Rattler this week. So that should be interesting.
Yeah, this was a team that was off to an epic start. I mean, they had the highest scoring offense, I think, after the first 2 weeks, or at least up there. And, we were doing predictions thinking, we were surprised that they were doing so well. And then now it's just not a surprise that they've lost 3 straight. And this is teams that lose 3 straight, losing record. This is probably where they sit in the first quarter of the year.
Yeah, 2-3. We got them right in the middle of the pack. They're playing Tampa Bay this week at home, and they are not favored at home. It's Tampa Bay by 3.5. But, when you've got Tampa Bay coming in and they've got all the weapons that they do, and you're starting a rookie quarterback that you selected in, the 4th round? Something like that. I'm not sure where Rattler what round he went in, 3rd, 4th, 5th, something like that. Hopes are not very high.
Not at all.
A quick fall from grace in New Orleans this year.
Yeah.
Number 16, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles at number 16, and they have dropped 9 spots. I have not been impressed with them at all this year. Nick Sirianni been mentioned as far as being on the hot seat as well. Philadelphia 2-2. Maybe we just haven't seen enough from them, but they have beaten both New Orleans, who they are above, and they have also beaten Green Bay, who obviously we haven't talked about yet. But they've lost to Atlanta and Tampa Bay. So they've had a harder schedule as well, tied for 11th as far as strength of schedule. Their opponents have a 550 winning record. But with the injuries with Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, Don't know what's happening with that team. They seem to have lost their identity a little bit. They're not the same Eagles team from last year, unless you're looking at the last part of last year. But yeah, number 16 overall. And I think it might be a little damaging to them being a 500 team at number 16, but that's what I see so far. Hopefully they've fixed some things in their off week.
Yeah, the flip side to this being the first quarter power rankings, it is still early on. They have some things to figure out. When they lose their wide receiver depth at the beginning of the season to a couple weeks, that kind of makes it very one-dimensional to play with them for the team to play down the field. But when they have talent, so when they figure it out, they can certainly rise the rankings. They could get back to that was that number 7, top 10, wherever they would have projected, and make it to the playoffs. They are a team that's capable of it.
Yeah, they're definitely a team that's capable of it. In that division, even they're the second team that we've mentioned in that division. Haven't talked about Washington or Dallas yet, but I think this week is really a statement game for them. I think if it's a close game with Cleveland, you could pretty much kind of hang on to them here in the middle of the rankings. If they lose to Cleveland, then we know what kind of team they're going to be. But if they can blow out Cleveland, then sure, maybe they deserve to be mentioned in that top 12 again.
Yeah, I like the way you spun that. ESPN has them at 11 still. So,
all right, ESPN,
they've got high hopes.
For a 2-2 team, a team that's only played 4 games and they're 500, that's pretty. I think that's pretty up there. But that's me.
Yeah,
they'll probably win this week. I mean, they're favored by 9.5.
Yeah. Maybe that's what they're looking into is the future future rankings.
They're giving them that third win right away. They're 3-2. Just give me.
Yeah, it's there on paper in their mind.
All right, number 15, we've got the Seattle Seahawks. I thought that they were going to be a good team, a pretty average team. They are a good team. They're an average team. Obviously, they're 3-3 after Thursday night. Took kind of a beating from San Fran. They turned the ball over too many dang times. Didn't give their offense enough of a chance to really make this one a game. San Fran, I don't remember what the spread was, but San Fran blew it out of the water. Kind of made an example of Seattle, and now they've lost 3 in a row. They probably would have been higher up in my rankings. Who knows? After the third week, I probably would have had them up in the top 5. And so this is why I don't do these kind of rankings all the time. But Seattle, 3-3. And if you look at their schedule, not very hard. 22nd toughest schedule. They've beaten Denver, New England, and Miami. Obviously, we've talked about all 3 of those teams already. And they've lost to Detroit, San Fran, and the Giants. So I think number 15 is probably right where they deserve to be, which is where we had them in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, when they don't slide much up or down, feel a little good about the pick there. I don't disagree with it. ESPN has them at 12, and to lose to San Fran and Detroit, who are we're still waiting to get to them in the rankings, then it's kind of fair to give them a little bit of respect. They were off to a fiery start, 3-0, to lose 3 straight, kind of there's a few more question marks.
Yeah, I still got love for him. Still got love for Mike McDaniel. Hope he does well there. But yeah, 3-3, right at 15. I think that's right where you belong. Number 14, right above them, San Fran. And San Fran, this is very disappointing for me because I actually, if you can see that, they dropped 13 points, which means I are 13 spots, which means I actually had San Fran slated as the number 1 team in the beginning of the year for myself. Obviously, that has not been the case. They've lost CMC. You can't really use that as an excuse, though, because Jordan Mason has been really good. Obviously, they had their disputes with Ayuk, and he didn't practice, and he sure looked rusty in the beginning when he came back. Debo was out for a couple of weeks. Trent Williams was hurt. But as of right now, they too, as we've mentioned before, they're 3-3. They've had the 24th most difficult schedule. So if you want to play that in reverse, it's the 8th easiest schedule in the NFL. They've beaten the Jets, the Pats, and now the Seahawks. They've lost to Minnesota, the Rams, and Arizona. And 2 of those teams we've talked about, and they lost to them.
Yeah. Considering they, I guess this is a pre-week 6 rankings, but consider they just beat the Seahawks, then, they sit above them wherever you would have placed them. That's how that works. That math works in my mind.
Yep.
It was a big shocker that they were off to such a rocky start. Like you said, when you lose players, they're out to injury. You can play that to a factor a little bit, but as a quality team, you should be able to figure it out and how to get around that until they can come back and play. So maybe that's what will happen and they'll rise the rankings again, but it certainly has been a rocky start for them.
Certainly has. Out of the top 10, that's tough. Number 13, a team that also has not moved. I thought that they were going to be an above average team, and so far they have been, is the Green Bay Packers. Even after losing Jordan Love and Malik Willis coming in and doing an admirable job winning those games, Green Bay, you would assume that they are going to be a team that is not going to go away anytime soon. Their strength of schedule, currently number 21 overall. They've beaten Indianapolis, Tennessee, and the Rams, which we've talked about all three of them. And they've lost to Philadelphia and Minnesota. So number 13 is their respect for this one.
Yeah, I think they got blown out by Minnesota. So in Lambeau, it doesn't feel good for them. The fact that they've had a backup quarterback behind the snap since week 2, I guess it is. Again, like we said before, you can't, if you're a quality team, you'll figure it out. It looks like they haven't slid from your rankings. ESPN has them at 9, top 10. So I was a little shocked by it, but they are plus 500. So
yeah, and they were getting their butts kicked. Minnesota kind of led them back into that game. I think they were up at 28-0 at one point, and continued to let Green Bay right back into that game with, I thought, was terrible play calling. Turned out to be right, and Green Bay actually made a game out of that one when it shouldn't have been. Good news for you, Arizona is at Green Bay this week, and Green Bay is favored by 5. That should be a great little shootout game. If you've got anybody playing in this one, go ahead and start them fantasy football-wise. They should all have good games from tight ends to running backs to wide receivers. But yeah, the over-under on that one is 47. But Green Bay should win this one for you. Gives Rams fans a little bit more, optimism.
I love that. Teams that we've lost to are, in the top rankings. So
absolutely. Top 12. This might be a little bit of a concern for some people, to put it lightly. I do not have Washington in the top 10. Yes, they are 4-1. And if you look at the teams who are 4-1 and better, there's only 4 of them. So realistically, they should be in the top 4. I don't even have them in the top 10. I think they're going to come to a reality check this week in Baltimore. Obviously, that's what I think. But I think it's going to happen anyway. If you look at the teams that they've played, they've beaten the Giants, they've beaten Cincinnati, the Cardinals, Cleveland, and they lost to Tampa Bay. So the one good team that they played, they lost to, and they are actually dead last. They have had the easiest schedule as far as a strength of schedule. Their opponents have a win percentage of 360, which, yeah, it's not good. So you're not great. They might be a good team. They can't control what schedule is for them, but they've literally played 4 teams that are not very good at this point, and they've won. Congratulations. You've been the better of the bad teams. They've got some deficiencies on defense. I think that's going to get exploited. I think Jaden Daniels is a great quarterback. I thought he should have went number 1 overall. But their wide receiver core is still a concern for me. They've got Terry McLaurin, but it's real easy to double team one guy when you can single cover everybody else. And if anybody made a mistake in drafting Brian Robinson Jr., thinking it was Bijan Robinson, good job, man. That really paid off. But I think that's going to come to an end. Their schedule gets a lot harder as the year goes on.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, 360, and not a tough schedule to play up front. Certainly builds up momentum, which can pay dividends going down into the rest of the season. But the teams that they beat, they're all below them right here. So 4-1, it gives a false sense of success. You give them a little respect because they are 4-1. There's only a few other teams like that. But when you play a factor into what future teams they have to play, the strength of schedule, probably gives you a true idea of their actual ranking.
Yeah, and they haven't played. They've played the Giants once, and they beat them, but they haven't played Dallas. They haven't played Philly. So their schedule is about to get a lot harder. And when I look at Washington for this year, we kind of talked about it earlier. I see Dallas from last year. I see Miami from last year, where they had easy schedules. They could very well win 10 games. I don't doubt that they're going to get double-digit wins, just because it's real easy at this point when you're 4-1. But I think it's going to be a false sense of security there. If they do make the playoffs, I think they lose round 1, just like the other teams did. Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
All right, number 11. Here we go. We got the Broncos up 1. Actually, that should be up 11. Up 11, not up 1. My little
That
thing did
sounds
not work. I had them at number, I was going to say, I didn't have the Broncos at 12. That would have been ridiculous. Had them at number 22 overall. And this is kind of a weird one for me because Denver, you wouldn't expect them to be 3-2 at this point. They've had a 500 schedule, which is tied for 16th. So I give them some respect there. They did beat Tampa Bay. They beat the Jets and they beat Arizona. So these are not easy teams to beat. They lost to Pittsburgh and Seattle. So we just talked about Seattle. We haven't even talked about Pittsburgh yet. So I think this number 11 ranking, while they haven't been flashy, their defense has been amazing. And if there's one thing that I continuously say, defense wins championships. And Denver has a top 3 defense in the NFL right now.
Yeah, when you can play both sides of the ball, play it well, or at least contend, that certainly helps you to win games. And the old adage, defense wins championship. When they're clicking like that, it makes it tough for other teams to beat you, and that reflects in the schedule there.
Yeah, and if I am not mistaken, I don't have it in front of me. I think Denver, do they go to New Orleans this week? No, they don't.
They're playing the Chargers.
They're playing the Chargers. That's what it was. So Chargers are coming off of a bye. I think you're going to have another punt fest there as well. But I think Denver wins that one too.
They could. They very well could. So that boosts their schedule, or that boosts their record. It makes them look, better on paper. So we'll see where they end up. For the record, ESPN has them at 19.
Wow, no love for the Broncos.
Yeah.
That's awful. Chargers are picked by 2.5, and the over-under is 35, which is one of the lowest, if not the lowest, for the week so far. So get ready for a snoozer of a game on that one.
Yeah.
But let's get into the top 10. I am anxious with this. Top 10, Buffalo at number 10, and I moved them up one spot. I didn't have high hopes like everybody else did for Buffalo this year, just because their defense was a little suspect. Their wide receivers were a little suspect, but they did get a bump up to number 10 overall. That's a bump from number 11. Buffalo this year, we all know that they got blown out by Baltimore. They also lost to Houston, who we haven't talked about yet. So good teams there, but they've won against Arizona, Miami, and Jacksonville. So when you look at those 3 teams, they're all 23 and under. So they've beaten easy teams. They've lost to hard teams. Buffalo, their schedule hasn't been hard, tied for 18th for toughest schedule. And who knows what's going to happen after this. But I think they're right where they should be at 3-2. They haven't shown me anything where they're going to be a real dominant team, but I'll still give them props as a top 10.
Yeah, and like you said, their 2 losses are from good teams, and their wins against the weak teams, arguably for the most part, were very one-sided. So they are a quality team. They are a top 10 team. ESPN has them at 6 still, but it has been a disappointment for, if you're a Bills fan, to see them this so low so early in the season.
And, and I wonder where they go after this week. They've got Monday Night Football against the Jets, and the Bills are favored by 2.5. So even if they do win this one, which they probably shouldn't, I mean, you're going into a division rival. I always like to give the edge to them, and they're still favored by 2.5. Who knows what's going to happen there with Nathaniel Hackett calling plays and not having their head coach there. I think there's too much drama for the Jets to actually pull one out. But so you've got Buffalo that beats the team that's ranked number 20. Okay, good for you. You're 4-2. Are you still really a number 6 team, ESPN? I don't know. I obviously, as a Ravens fan, I'm not worried about playing them because, we already beat them. I'm not worried about them. So,
yeah. You got to worry when you go into the playoffs. Do you split at that point?
Yeah. Well, I hope I hope that's one of the teams that if we make it there, big knock on wood, we don't.
You've already got their number.
Them. Yeah.
You've already got their number.
We know what their number is.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Number 9 is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to give them some props here a little bit. They moved up one spot. I did have them in the top 10. So I did give Pittsburgh, that's actually a plus 11 again. All of my numbers are off. So I had them at number 20 to start the year. Pittsburgh has done much better than what I thought that they were going to. Everybody thought they were going to run away. But if you looked at Pittsburgh's schedule, and it's playing out this way too, high hopes for them. They had a very cake schedule in the beginning of the year. They beat Atlanta. They beat Denver. They beat the Chargers. They're all decent teams. But I think, Pittsburgh just kind of edged out there. They lost to Indy and they lost to Dallas. So they've had a relatively, I'll say tough schedule. It's 13th overall. But to be 3-2 in their position, not bad.
Yeah, you give them the respect with the plus 500 record at this point. And so you can actually see the plus 11. It's just slanted a little bit. It's a little skewed, but
It is. I'm gonna have to
uh,
fix that.
yeah,
Man.
I can see that. But back to the Steelers, these were one of the 3-0 teams after week 3. And for them to lose 2 straight, you start to question, do they belong in the top 10? I guess after this week, we'll see, truly what happens. But it was just a little strange with, high hopes with Russell Wilson. He's not on the team, or not behind the snap, but they've been playing well without him.
Yeah, they have. And, talking on more of a fantasy perspective here, fantasy football perspective, a lot of people, for whatever reason, they're questioning, oh, should I start Justin Fields? I'm worried that he's going to get pulled, halfway through the game. Well, that must mean, number one, that Russell Wilson is ready to play, but I don't think that you can pull a quarterback who's got a winning record at this point. Not only that, but they're playing at Las Vegas and they're favored by 3. So I don't think they're going to have a lot of problems there. And if Pittsburgh is smart, they go run heavy. You're not going to have to put up a lot of points to beat Las Vegas at this point. So, you go run heavy, and who can run the ball? Well, Justin Fields can. So if he's not supposed to throw the ball a whole lot, you don't expect him to throw 40 times in a game. I think this means that Pittsburgh goes 4-2, and deservedly so.
Yep.
And if they can beat Las Vegas, well, that was a team that the Ravens lost to at home. So, even more kudos for them. Good job.
It all ties back.
Number 8, Cowboys are not a bad team. They've fallen 3 spots. I had them at number 5. A lot of people think that they weren't going to make the playoffs, or they're going to be a horrible team, whatever it is. Dallas is 3-2. They have had an easy schedule, though, if you do look at it. They've beaten Pittsburgh, which is why they're ahead of Pittsburgh. The Chargers and Cleveland. They've lost to New Orleans and Baltimore again. Baltimore not on the screen yet, but you've got New Orleans in there. They're a 50-50 club as well. So Cowboys are going to be in the thick of it, whether you like it or not. And here's the scary thing about Dallas is that everybody was concerned about who their running back is going to be, right? Ezekiel Elliott's not the guy. He wasn't going to be the guy. He was a great starter. And now Jerry Jones came out and said, we're going to save Ezekiel Elliott's legs for, later on in the season. What the hell are you doing that for? You got Rico Dowdle in there. He's your starting running back now. So you've cleared that up. He's your starter. CeeDee Lamb is still CeeDee Lamb. You got some issues on defense. Deron Bland is out, but Dallas is still going to be Dallas. They're still going to win games. They've got a really good quarterback in there in Dak Prescott. So, 3-2, easier schedule. Again, kind of the same as last year, but number 8.
Yeah. It's a quality ranking, plus 500 team. We start, I guess makes a little more sense. They're top 10 right now. ESPN has them at number 10. They're hosting Detroit.
They are
at home. So they beat Detroit at home last year in the regular season. So, they have, for the most part, the same offense that they had last year. So they could do it. They could certainly make it happen.
Yeah, Micah Parsons is a question mark to play. Last time I checked, he did not practice later on in the week last week with a bum ankle. Middle linebacker Eric Kendricks also did not practice, so their defense might be banged up, and that's not what you want going in and facing a very tough Detroit Lions team. And this is really going to be a fun game, maybe the best game of the weekend with the Lions and the Cowboys. We haven't even talked about the Lions yet, but that should be a good benchmark for both of these teams, actually.
Yeah. Win or lose either team, do they slide much considering how strong these teams are? I guess we'll look at, down the road, but it certainly does change the rankings a little bit. Can Dallas actually move up? Is Detroit not as good as that we thought they were? It'll be a good matchup either way. That
it will. Talking about the Lions, boom. Want to pull that one up. Lions are just ahead of them in my power rankings. The Lions have slid as well. And a lot of people are liking the Lions still. I've got the Lions. I had them originally at number 3, and I marked them down to number 7 now. And here's why. And this is why I kind of said this is going to be a benchmark game. One of these teams is going to prove that they're for real, and the other one is going to prove that they're maybe a semi-fraud at this point. Detroit has the 6th easiest schedule of the year so far. They have beaten the Rams, Arizona, and Seattle. They've had their bye week last week. They lost to Tampa Bay. So they did lose to a hard team. They've had a couple of easy matchups in there. They got the early bye week. They've only played 4 games, so we don't really have a very good sense of what this team is going to look like until this week, I think, is going to be the main thing.
Yeah. Benchmark game, like you said, You start to see, they haven't been utilizing Amon-Ra as much as they did last year. Do they turn it around? Do they start going to him more? Their tight end has not been much of a threat at all. So it's very different than this season than it was last season for them. But they are 3-1 coming off a bye week. Their legs are fresh.
Yep.
They'll be good to go. So it's a good matchup for them.
And you know what? I purposely brought up Denver's injuries there Dallas's injuries there for a reason. The Lions don't have any injuries, right? They're coming in fresh. I think safety Kirby Joseph was questionable at some point in time, but everybody's fresh on their team, ready to go. So you've got your starting roster in there against Dallas. And I think this game means more to Detroit than it does Dallas. Lions are predicted by 3. And again, what will probably be a very high scoring game. The over-under is 52. So expect some fireworks.
Yeah, I will say ESPN has them at 4, and they have not slid from their week-by-week rankings. So if they pull out a win, do they jump back up there?
Well, I think it depends on what teams at number 5 and 6 are going to do. Let's get into that. I've got Tampa Bay, and I was not a favorite of Tampa Bay, and that should say plus 20. I had them at 26. I thought last year was a fluke. I think they finished 9-8 to win their division. They were a 50-50 team. I looked at their running game, and I saw Rachaad White is nothing. He finished last year with an average run of about 3 yards. This year, it's the same thing. Lucky for them, they've got Bucky back there, so that they can change that pace up a little bit. And, Bucky Irving really should be their starting running back in Tampa. At some point in time, Mike Evans has got to fall off. You would think you can't have 1,000 receiving yards every year. So I was thinking that maybe, hey, this year is his 10th, 11th, 12th year in the league. Might fall off. Maybe Baker doesn't prove that he's the guy that everybody thought he was. So I didn't have much hope for Tampa. They have proved me wrong. I can eat my crow on that one. Tampa Bay has done a very good job. They're 3-2. I mentioned it before. They've had also the toughest schedule in the NFL so far at 3-2. So you got to give them some credit for that. They've beaten Detroit, which is why they're ahead of Detroit. They've beaten Washington, which is why they're ahead of Washington. They've beaten Philadelphia. The 2 teams that they've lost to, Atlanta and Denver. So even the teams that they've lost to have winning records.
Yeah, they've certainly had a tough schedule for the first 5 weeks. Being 3-2, if you're following the logic, they did beat the Lions, so they should be above them. Absolutely. Does that game go either way next time they match up? I'd suggest that. But yeah, Mike Evans, Godwin, they're always, they're dynamic. They can make a lot of receptions. They score touchdowns. Rachaad White has had flashes of greatness, but again, I fall back to they're an inconsistent team. But they've been playing together for quite some time. It's been a similar offensive roster for the past few seasons. So are they clicking? Is it finally working? Top 6 is a good spot for them, showing how they've done this season so far.
Yeah, and I think Tampa Bay's biggest opponent is going to be themselves going forward, because obviously the hardest part of their schedule here is kind of in the rearview mirror already. Obviously, they've got some tougher games coming up here, but to have the toughest schedule in the NFL right now and come away at 3-2, that's where I would have thought, hey, you know what, they're going to be maybe 1-4 at this point in time. So again, kudos to Tampa. You definitely proved me wrong. And sticking in that division, I've got Atlanta plus 16. Again, my numbers are off on there, but that should be a plus 16. When it converts over into this program here, it smashes the numbers altogether. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to make that not happen for next time. But yeah, Atlanta, number 5, barely above Tampa Bay. Should they be? Should they not be? I don't know. But they beat Tampa Bay. It's one of Tampa Bay's losses we just mentioned. Atlanta's also beaten Philly. They've beaten New Orleans. They lost to Pittsburgh and Kansas City. In every one of their games that they've played this year, it has been a 1-score game. So is it real or is it not real in Atlanta? And I wouldn't have thought it was, just based off of what Atlanta did in the draft. They used a number 1 pick to get Michael Penix Jr. when they had Kirk Cousins. There was a lot of question marks of, is Kirk ready to go? Can he even play at this point? What's going on? Drake London was kind of abysmal last year. And the only thing it seemed like they had was good running back in Bijan Robinson. And now you look at that team and you go, well, Kirk is leading this team and Bijan's not even really having that great of a year. Drake London is for real. And how about that Darnell Mooney guy, who's their wide receiver number 2, who didn't do anything in Chicago last year? So they're getting the most out of their players.
Yeah, when you start, like you said, they're getting the most out of their players, the players you didn't expect, the players that you did expect. They're not doing what you thought they would do, uh, but other players are stepping up. And Kirk Cousins has taken a team to the playoffs before, and he could do it here with the Falcons. They weren't off to a fantastic start, but they've sort of settled in and sitting at 3-2. Deservedly, they belong in the top 10. So top 5 is solid. ESPN has them at 14. I think that's disrespect.
Wow.
But I'm good with top 5 here.
No, I think it is disrespectful too. We talked about Tampa Bay having the number 1, the toughest schedule in the NFL. Atlanta has number 2.
Yep.
So again, to have the second toughest schedule, they could very well be 5-0. They really could, because like I said, or they could be 0-5. Every one of their games was decided by one score. That was it. But when you talk about, well, they played, Kansas City. Kansas City's undefeated. Could have almost beat them. I think maybe that was one where it was a tippy toe or whatever, but can't discredit Atlanta. They've had some really good games. Did I think that they were going to be here? Absolutely not. Obviously, I thought they were going to be somewhere in the middle of the pack. But we'll see what happens. They're probably going to put another one in the win column this week, as they are going to Carolina. Falcons are favored by 6. So, wow, what happens if Carolina, or if the Falcons go 4-2? I wouldn't move them anywhere. I'd probably keep them at number 5. But ESPN, you got to take a good hard look at that one.
Yeah, it depends how some of those other teams show up, but but yeah, they're going to go 4-2. Their record only improves from here, in theory, if they beat the Panthers, which they should. So
Absolutely.
sitting there is good.
All right, number 4. That's my guys. I had them at number 2, and some people might say that this is a little high, but they are 3-2. Dropped them down a couple of notches. Baltimore has had one of these teams that is tied for the 5th toughest schedule in the NFL. And I think number 4 is probably a pretty decent spot to have them. They beat Dallas. They beat Buffalo. Yes, they did lose to Kansas City in the first week. Could have went either way there. Got beat by the Raiders in week 2, which that was a comeback from behind, and we completely shellacked. We came back from behind on Cincinnati. So, but 3-2 either way. I think Baltimore at this point in time, they start the season 0-2. They're on a 3-game win streak. They beat one of the best teams in Buffalo. So yeah, that's where I've got them coming into this week, and they're playing Washington at home. I think that might be another one for them to chalk up in the win column.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd pick Baltimore on that if I were a betting man. Week 1 loss, arguably questionable. They lost to the Chiefs that, as you pointed out before, are undefeated. So, you don't sit at the top 1 spot if you're the Ravens, but that was a good team that you lost to by a single score. And, when they drop to 0-2, you're kind of like, you're scratching your head, what's going on? But they've settled in. They've gone 3-2, won 3 straight to go get to 3-2. So top 5 is good. Number 4, I like that pick.
Baltimore picked by 6.5 this week with an over-under of 51. That should be exciting. And a lot of people are saying Baltimore's defense has no idea how to handle Jaden Daniels, and I laugh. I laugh at you, because they have Lamar Jackson on their team. Do you think that they don't practice against Lamar Jackson? It's funny. They haven't gone against a quarterback like Jaden Daniels before. They have for the last 5 years.
Yeah, they see him every day.
They practice against him every day. So, all right. This one coming up here is probably going to get some people's panties all in a bunch. I've got Kansas City at number 3. Yeah, right. Not the best team in the NFL. I don't care if they're the defending champions or not. Yes, they are only one of 2 teams that has a 5-0 record at this point. But if you look at Kansas City, again, the schedule makers have been in their favor here. The 23rd toughest schedule in the NFL. Yes, they are undefeated. Yes, they have also gotten some help from the referees in just about every damn game that they've played in. Last week it seemed like it was getting a lot better. Kansas City had a lot of penalties against them, but it seems like a lot of favorable matchups. They've played the Chargers with a banged up team, and their best safety, Derwin James, was suspended for that one game, which was odd. The Baltimore situation, we saw what happened with the Bengals, almost beat them as well. Another questionable pass interference call. So I don't buy Kansas City as a 5-0 team. I don't think that they're that good. I think that they've gotten lucky compared to the top 2 teams that are up there.
Yeah, I'd agree with, they certainly should have lost one of those 5 games. I would agree with that. They've pulled it off. They've shown that they are a championship caliber team. They have arguably one of the best quarterbacks at his age in his group. You got solid tight end, solid wide receivers. Their RB1 has been out, so how are they pulling it off without him? Others have stepped up. When you go top 3 here, top 5, does it really matter whether they sit at ranking 1, ranking 5? They're still pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we have to give them credit for that. 5-0 team, you think they sit, there's only 2 5-0 teams. You think they sit at 1 or 2, but when they do, when the ball lands their way, quite frequently, kind of takes a little bit of the credit away from them. And knowing who we have left for 1 and 2, I'm curious to see where the other 5-0 team sits.
Yeah, and here's getting into number 2. If they played this week, if they played last week, which team would you take as the most favorable team here? I would actually take Houston. I would take the Houston Texans to beat Kansas City at this point because they are lacking in wide receivers. Because, yes, they did get Kareem Hunt back, but could he be, it's kind of a merry-go-round at the running back position as well. I think if Kansas City plays Houston at this point, I think Houston wins, which is why I put them at number 2. Houston is 4-1. They are tied for 5th with the toughest schedule in the NFL. And that's why they're there. They're 4-1. They're a very good team. And the only team that they have lost to, we haven't seen yet. Hint, hint. Wink, wink. Haven't seen them on here yet. So that's why I've got them there.
Yeah. Listen, that plays a part. I'm curious, do these rankings generally, when we talk about strength of schedule, we're talking about only past games, right? Not future games where they'll line up, because there's just so many factors at that point. So
yeah, I'm not looking at the whole schedule. I'm just looking at who they've currently played and what their record is. Yep.
Yeah.
So obviously they get a little boost up there because of who is at number 1. They've played that team that has 5 wins and 0 losses. But overall, I think that Houston is a team, and to have them at maybe number 10 earlier in the year, people were saying AFC Championship game might have Houston in it. Yes, that's a possibility. CJ Stroud is the real deal. Once they get Joe Mixon back, that's going to help them. Nico Collins is out this week, so they're playing New England though, so that they're going to go 5-0 or 5-1. Texans are favored by 6.5 at this point. They don't even need Nico Collins, and that's saying a lot. They could throw it to,
Tank Dell
and Stephon Diggs, and throw it to Dalton now. And, if you don't get him back, at least they got Dameon Pierce back. So they've got a lot of depth on that team. They're a very solid offense, and I have a lot of faith in DeMeco Ryans.
They certainly do. They've been playing very well. Losing to one of the 5-0 teams, that does, using that math, they do fall behind them. But yeah, they are quite a turnaround team this year. That's kind of exciting to watch them play and see what they do. I didn't know they didn't have Nico this week, but like you said, they're playing the Pats and they won't need it. They should win it, and that only makes their ranking stronger.
Yep, absolutely. And then talking about that number 1 team, first time ever in my life that I would probably ever put them here, being from Minnesota, being a former Minnesota Vikings fan. What is that? A plus 26? I had no faith in Minnesota. And let me preface this. Obviously, I had no faith in them because I had them at 27 or 26 or whatever it is. Looking at their schedule, this was a hard schedule for Minnesota, right? It doesn't show it on paper. When you look at them, they've got the 14th hardest schedule, right? But who did they beat? They went in week 1 and they had to beat the Giants in New York. Then they beat Houston. Tough game. Then they beat San Fran. Tough game. I mean, you're talking about the NFC champions. You're talking about another team that made the playoffs last year. They beat the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay. Again, not an easy place to get a win. Green Bay, former playoff team, right? So they've played some very good teams, and they've won, and they're undefeated. Better strength of schedule than, even Kansas City. So whether you want to say, hey, Kansas City should be at number 2, I definitely don't think that they should be at number 1. Minnesota has played harder teams and beaten them. What I'm sad about at this point is that all of my Minnesota Vikings fans out there, this is not going to last. I've been around for this, right? For like 25, 30 years. Minnesota has a great opportunity to do a great thing, but they just always fall flat. And I'm going back all the way back to like 98, where they went 15-1 in the season, and everybody thought that they were punching their ticket to the Super Bowl, and they lose to the Atlanta Falcons by missing a field goal by a guy who didn't miss a field goal all season. You're talking about a team that's led by Sam Darnold. And while Sam Darnold has played admirably, you have to question, where was this guy in New York? Where was this guy in Carolina? Where was this guy in San Francisco? Is he the real deal? And I think that's a very real question to ask. The defense wasn't great last year. Their offensive line was in shambles last year. They were picking up players, midway through the year to patch up their offensive line. For now, though, I give it to you, Minnesota Vikings. You are the best team in the NFL after the first quarter. I hope that you can hang on to that, because that would be a real exciting thing for me. Last thing that I will say is, because I had them so low, this was my prediction for Minnesota, was that if they were going to start Sam Darnold, who I had no faith in Sam Darnold. I thought that they would be 0-5 at this point, and they would be putting in JJ McCarthy at the bye week. No JJ, extra pressure on Sam, and that dude has stepped up.
Yeah, it seems he's kind of landed in a team structure that suits him best. Kevin O'Connell has shown that he is a winning coach. He can win. He's had strong players. He's had strong team. You lose your quarterback that you've had so much faith in for the past few years, and you pick up this guy, Sam Darnold, who's been in arguably two of the worst teams in the NFL, the Jets and the Panthers, post Ron Rivera era. And he just doesn't do anything. He's just a dud. So sitting at 27 early on in the season, that's a fair assessment. They lost Dalvin Cook. They don't have their star running back that they've had, who has had off and on seasons, but they were a dynamic team prior. And when you pick up these people that have to fill in the blanks, you don't have much faith in them to do what they've done. But they did it. They've been winning. I will say Donald has really settled into the team that maybe it's just the way that it's run, the way that the offense runs. Maybe it's suited for him, and that's what we're seeing is he's found something that allows him to, again, we talked before about these quarterbacks that have had great college careers. For where he played, he there's a reason he got drafted very high. He has had success in the past, and is he settling in? I don't think so. I think they're a well-coached team, and that's what's showing. But it is not long-term, and we probably will see them slide in the rankings here.
Yeah, well, they'll be up there for at least one more week because they're on a bye this week, and then the real test comes back. They've got a bye, and then they've got Detroit coming in after that. It'll be a home game for them. They'll be well-rested. They'll have that bye week. They should win that game, but I think, again, when we talked about this week for the Lions, they've got the Cowboys there. That's going to be a test for them. And then they're going to have another test the week after that. So no rest for the weary as far as the Lions go. And Minnesota has played admirably. They, like I said, they beat the Giants by 22. I don't think that was a surprise, but they come back and beat the Texans by 27. Wow. I mean, that was just a throttling.
Yeah. Your number 2 ranked team here. That's incredible.
And they beat the Jets last week in London. That could have went really either way. Nobody's got home field advantage there. That was another good game for them. So like I said, I like Minnesota. I don't think it'll last, but for the time being, they look like a very good playoff team at this point in time.
Yep. Now they did it last year. They can do it again. They have the right tools. They can do it, but winning out is a very low percentage of that.
Yeah, and I'll give credit to you as well. Talking about Dalvin Cook, they had 2 years ago. Last year, they went with Alexander Mattison, and he didn't pan out. Now he's the backup, possibly starter in Las Vegas. They go out and get Aaron Jones, and that guy has been amazing for the organization. So yeah, it's in the beginning of the year. You didn't think a whole lot of Minnesota. They lost a cornerback in a DUI accident, and then they get Addison. Does the same damn thing. He gets a DUI the very next week. And you start to think, man, there's got to be something going on in that locker room. this team is going to be in shambles again. JJ goes down. It's like, okay, this is it. And, looking at that, it's like, hey, that's part of the reason why I had him so low. I just did not think that this was all going to come together. But kudos to the Skull Vikings.
Kudos to the team that's undefeated. You got to give respect where it's due.
Absolutely. Well, that does it for us in the power rankings. We'll probably do this again at the midpoint. We've got 18 weeks in a season now. So probably after week 9, we'll come back and we'll do the halftime power rankings, and we'll see where we're at that point in time. But I want to thank Nick. Thanks for being here and having this conversation and doing the cast. And then we'll have to talk offline and see when we can connect again. Maybe we'll do a game by game for week 7.
Awesome. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. And not to get sidetracked from the NFL, but I noticed your Baltimore Orioles sweater there. Being a Yankees fan, I really apologize for I was hoping to see that matchup. The way they were going back and forth all season, it would have been a pretty good ALCS matchup.
Yeah, that would have been good. I was looking forward to that one too. I would have been cheering for the opposite side, but still would have been fun.
Yeah. All right, man. As always, had fun.
Hey, man, thanks. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the games. And as for everybody else out there, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the games as well. As always, if you've got any questions, look down there at the bottom. You can check me out on Facebook, X, YouTube, IG, Spotify, all that good stuff. I was answering a bunch of questions on X this morning about fantasy football matchups, who to sit, who to start, all that fun stuff. So drop me a line, drop Nick a line. Let us know what you're thinking. Otherwise, everyone have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Nick.
Right, goodbye.